While most presidents wore suit jackets, ties, and dress pants all the time, you don't have to any longer. Because Presidents Unplugged has merch. If you want to check out some new shirts to buy as a nice gift for somebody in your family or just something that you want yourself, go to presidentsunpluggedmerch.com to check out new shirts, hoodies, crew necks, and anything else that you can dream of. Now in many more colors and new designs coming soon. I'm very excited for the President's Unplugged merch store to finally be open. Now, let's get back to the show. In the year 1780, in the heat of the Revolutionary War, two young men, both under the age of 18, were fighting in this war against Britain. They were both young and didn't really have any experience, but really wanted to impress their mother. These two boys eventually got smallpox, and the older one sadly passed away. That younger one survived through pretty much a miracle of his mother coming last minute. That young boy was Andrew Jackson, our 7th United States president. And this is the Season 1 finale of Presidents Unplugged, talking about one of the most insane men to ever be our president. A guy that, on the surface, just looks like that guy that's on the $20 bill. But looking a little deeper, this man is so much more than that. So, let's talk about what makes Andrew Jackson so incredibly interesting. Let's do this. Andrew Jackson was our first U.S. president to really live on the frontier. He was raised in Waxhaw, North Carolina, which is pretty much on the border between North and South Carolina. He became an orphan extremely young. He lost his brother in the Revolutionary War, as I said earlier. He lost another brother in the Revolutionary War. His mother died from cholera a couple of years after the war, and his dad died before he was even born. So by the age of 16, Andrew Jackson had nobody. And he really had to fend for himself for most of his adult life. But this challenge came on with another big challenge. What in the world am I going to do with my life? Andrew Jackson really didn't know what he wanted to do. He had fought in the war, he liked it, but he didn't know how he could really make a career off of that. So he became an elementary English teacher for a little bit, but he really didn't like it that much. So then he went and studied law in Salisbury, North Carolina. Go Catawba, by the way. And then after he became basically a lawyer, just to let you know, becoming a lawyer back then was a lot easier than it is now. But he became a lawyer. He moved to the Nashville area of Tennessee, which wasn't really a defined big city yet. It was just kind of an area. But Andrew Jackson fought for this area in Tennessee and even the state as a whole. But hold on, it's not called Tennessee yet. In 1796, at the Constitutional Convention, Andrew Jackson went to go represent the state that would become Tennessee. He fought for it to become a U.S. state, and he's one of the big reasons that it's called Tennessee at all, because Tennessee is a reference to an Indian chief that was a part of its heritage. So Andrew Jackson really fought for the name Tennessee and fought for it to become the state that it is today. And after being this great fighter for the state, he became its first congressman. Did he fit in this congressman position? Kind of. He was a fine congressman, but this started to really bring up Andrew Jackson's flaws. He really had no filter, and if you know anybody in your life that has absolutely no filter, you know how difficult it is to just sit there and hear them speak things, even if they're the truth, but you're kind of sitting there and you're like, did you really have to say that? Yeah, unfiltered. And this unfilteredness was brought up a lot. Even Thomas Jefferson called him an unfiltered person on multiple cases, and Andrew Jackson was not a fan of it. As you're going to see later in this episode, Andrew Jackson was a little bit fiery. He had his opinions, and he was going to let everyone know about them, okay? And after becoming this congressman for a while, he said, no, this isn't for me. But then he became a senator for Tennessee. But yet again, for only 6 months. He was trying to find his place in politics because he thought that's where he's supposed to be. And throughout this time, Andrew Jackson gained a nickname that he would have for the rest of his life, Old Hickory. He gained this name right around when he became a congressman and a senator, and he was called it because hickory is one of the strongest and toughest kinds of wood. And Andrew Jackson was just like it. He was tough. He wouldn't budge. He was strong. And also, just to add on to the name, he would often have a hickory cane with him to help him walk. And he was just a strong person, giving him this now famous name, Old Hickory. But now that we know this nickname, let's talk about what made Andrew Jackson so fiery, so tough, so strong. It's probably one of the biggest things he's known for, his duels. Andrew Jackson, some people say he got in 40 duels in his life, some people say 100, but what we know is that it was way more than one average person should have. And if you haven't already figured out by this time in the episode, if somebody disagreed with Jackson, he was not having it. And Andrew Jackson's way of settling something was, oh, let's duel. Let's just put guns to each other and see how it works. Yeah, Andrew Jackson loved dueling. And one of the most famous stories you'll hear about Andrew Jackson's dueling times is his duel with Charles Dickinson in 1806. Now, in that time, duels were fully sensical. It made sense. Oh yeah, I'm just going to shoot you because you disagree with me. Awesome. So this could be over a cheating scandal, stealing money, treason, all this stuff. What was this duel over? Horse racing. Andrew Jackson and Charles Dickinson disagreed and didn't show up for a horse race that they bet on. They talked trash about each other in a local newspaper, and Andrew Jackson said, nah, I'm not dealing with that. And they met up on May 30th, 1806, guns in hand, shooting right at each other. Charles Dickinson actually shot first and lodged a bullet 1 inch from Andrew Jackson's heart. But Andrew Jackson didn't care. He shot a bullet right at Charles Dickinson and killed him instantly. Now, let me just get this straight. Andrew Jackson got shot 1 inch from the heart, unfazed, shot his own gun, and killed a man. Now, if he just took out this bullet, like with surgery, that makes sense. But no, Andrew Jackson left this bullet in his chest for the rest of his life. 40 years! This is one of the many reasons in this episode that you're going to hear Andrew Jackson and say, he did what now? Are you serious? Andrew Jackson was crazy. And I need to prove this like a million times in this episode for you to get the point. But now, let's talk about the crazy success he got in the War of 1812. While George Washington himself might not have had an Instagram page, Presidents Unplugged does. If you want to see some presidential content and overall updates on the show, come to the Instagram at presidents_unplugged. See you there. The United States in the War of 1812 was not doing too hot. We had a lot of deaths, unnecessary. The British had burned the White House. Yeah, we weren't doing too good. Until the Battle of New Orleans, led by Andrew Jackson. He led our American forces. And after having the traumatic experience in the Revolutionary War, Andrew Jackson didn't like Britain too much. So he fought extremely hard in the Battle of New Orleans, and it paid off. While Britain had thousands of casualties, the United States had less than 100. We were absolutely rocking in the Battle of New Orleans, all thanks to Andrew Jackson. And after coming back from this war, Andrew Jackson, similar to people like Eisenhower that we've talked about in the past, was a war hero. The people loved him because he fought extremely hard for the country. Oh my goodness gracious, he would be an amazing president, said like half the country. And so starts the election of 1824, also known as Holy Mackerel. The election of 1824 is a crazy one, and it is definitely one that I'm going to mention in November. Oh my goodness, I get to preface you on this. In November, the month of elections and Thanksgiving, we're going to have a special series for the first 3 weeks of November. I'm going to talk about some of the craziest elections in history, and then, oh my goodness, we get to talk about Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving week, and what president really started it. So, okay, back on topic. The election of 1824, two major candidates were up to bat. John Quincy Adams, a New England aristocrat, and Andrew Jackson, a person from Tennessee who was going to rise up the ranks and become the leader of our country. In this election, a lot of people supported Jackson. Honestly, more people backed him up than John Quincy Adams, and shortening this down to a minimum, Andrew Jackson actually won the electoral vote and the popular vote, but one of the other candidates, John Quincy Adams, said, "Hey, Henry Clay, if you vote for me, I'll give you a really good job." And Henry Clay, instead of voting for Jackson, voted for John Quincy Adams and influenced others to do so as well, losing Andrew Jackson the presidency. He was furious. It was unnecessary, rude, and theoretically unconstitutional, but we didn't bring that up for a while. But he wasn't giving up like that. In the election of 1828, he came back guns a-blazing. No, not literally Andrew Jackson, no duels. He came back guns a-blazing and wanted to win. And in 1828, he ran against John Quincy Adams once again. But the country, after hearing all of this junk about John Quincy Adams' scam, Andrew Jackson, the second time around, had it a little bit better, and he beat John Quincy Adams and had a little piece of his heart put back. He was happy. He was the president. And what in the world was he going to do? Well, Andrew Jackson served 2 terms, just to give you a little preface. He won in 1828, beating John Quincy Adams, and won again in 1832 pretty easily because the people liked him. But did he do all great things? No, not really. Andrew Jackson was really passionate about growing the land of the United States. How are we going to do that? Oh, just buy this land from the Indians and give them places to stay. Instead, Andrew Jackson was not worried about these Indians' well-being. He bought their land from them in most of the time unfairly, paying them not enough, and then he said, "Oh, we own it now, bye-bye," and he sent the Indians away, starting what is now known as the Trail of Tears. And even though Andrew Jackson was a pretty likable guy, this is the main reason people didn't like him. Andrew Jackson sent tons and tons and tons of Indians out of the land that they had lived unfairly with no help in the process, and thousands of them died moving away from what used to be their land. But here's the other big thing that I really want to push, and it is something that a lot of people just do not realize about Andrew Jackson, and this is actually pretty important, and something that might be maybe the reason that he's on the $20 bill. Andrew Jackson was our last U.S. president to fully pay off the United States' debt. Hooray! Oh my goodness, he did something so great. No debt for the United States. Now, would this last for a crazy amount of time? Absolutely not. Andrew Jackson also feuded with some of the banks in the United States. He didn't like a federal bank. He wanted more states' banks. So he sent out this money elsewhere, and people were okay with it. They thought, okay, he knows what he's doing. until the president that came after him, his vice president, Martin Van Buren, became president, and his presidency was off to a bad start. After Andrew Jackson took a lot of money away from the federal bank, Martin Van Buren was lost and thrown into the Panic of 1837, one of the biggest financial problems and depressions in United States history. But let's all remember how important Andrew Jackson paying off our debt was, because to this day, it's still pretty impressive. And to sum up and finish off this episode in a nice bow, I have two interesting stories about Andrew Jackson to finish us off. First one, after Andrew Jackson won and became president, a man came up to him at the White House with 2 loaded guns. And for the first time in history, a man was trying to assassinate the president. Oh no. He brings out these 2 guns in front of Andrew Jackson and tries to shoot him with the first gun. It misfires. Oh no. Well, good thing he has a second gun. He attempts to shoot Andrew Jackson with the second gun. Oh my gosh, that one misfired too. And just like that, Andrew Jackson had had enough of this awful aim, misfired shooter, that he gets out his old hickory cane and beats the man on the ground until he's about half dead. Onlookers had to bring Andrew Jackson off of this person because Andrew Jackson was so furious, he just couldn't stop hitting him with this hard wooden cane. What a delight he is. And after Andrew Jackson sadly passed away, he had one more funny story in his life. Andrew Jackson had a pet parrot named Paul. A beautiful parrot that at the time was exotic. Nobody had seen parrots. They repeat what you say? What? This parrot was invited to Andrew Jackson's funeral. Nothing wrong with that. It's just this cute little gray parrot. But what we didn't realize is that this parrot had heard Andrew Jackson speak. Andrew Jackson had the mouth of a sailor. He cussed like nobody was watching, and this parrot knew this all too well. At Andrew Jackson's funeral, after hearing his master, Andrew Jackson's name, Paul the parrot starts cussing uncontrollably, so loud and so disturbingly that he had to be taken out of the funeral. Paul the parrot was never heard of again. We really don't know where he went. All we know is that where he got that language, he learned from the best. And that's what makes Andrew Jackson so important. Wow! And just like that, we have finished the 15th episode ever of Presidents Unplugged, meaning that we got it. We're done with Season 1. Now, normally I'd give you a break after a full season, because, I've worked hard and you've worked hard listening, and we both need a break, right? But next week is a pretty important week in history, and I can't miss it. Tune in next Friday. Wait, no, that's wrong. Tune in next Thursday on September 11th, where I'm going to have a very special episode to honor the events of September 11th, 2001. This episode is filled with patriotism, but also filled with sadness. An episode to kick off Season 2 that you won't want to miss. And I can't wait to see you there. I'm Ty Svensson, this is Presidents Unplugged, and I'll see you next week. God bless. We need to make an executive decision now. The executive decision to follow Presidents Unplugged on Apple Podcasts or Spotify today to be notified weekly that your favorite presidential podcast has released new content. Now, let's get back to the show.